Hey all, welcome to the last day of Unit 5. We are going to wrap everything up today. We're going to look at the cultural effects and the political effects and how all of this ties together, these Enlightenment ideas, how they're going to inspire different people to revolt and eventually go on to have their own governments. So we've seen the end of absolutism. We are moving into some revolutionary times, and I'll just leave it at that. I'll leave you with a little bit of suspense for next class. Remember that you will need to make sure you have your test review completed after today. You need to make sure that's turned in on Google Classroom. Please make sure you are submitting it the correct way. If you do not go back into the assignment post and post it there, you have to add your completed test review out of your Google Drive. If you do not have it completed, there's not going to be anything there for me to grade. So please make sure you get that done. You'll have time in class to do that. Don't worry, don't stress over that. I'll help you do it if you don't know how to do it. But if you need a pass to go to the library, please make sure you get one of those from me today. Or you can always get a pass to come back and see me as well. All right, let's jump right on in and wrap this up, okay? All right, so we have looked at some of the differing opinions on how government should be run and who should run it, but how does that affect anything? Well, these Enlightenment ideas, you already know that they don't mesh well with absolutism. So as people begin to embrace Enlightenment thought more and more, we're going to see more and more democratic revolutions beginning to occur. There are two specific ones that you need to make sure you know that were influenced by the Enlightenment. So democratic revolutions occurred in America with our Revolutionary War when we declared our independence from Great Britain, and then also in France. So when you all became experts on these various Enlightenment thinkers, you heard ideas that we embrace as Americans, things like freedom of religion, freedom of speech, natural rights like life, liberty, and property, separation of powers. These ideas influenced our founding fathers, and they shaped in the way that they helped shape our country and the way that we're still kind of run today. So Thomas Jefferson reflected these thoughts when he wrote the Declaration of Independence. Now, the Declaration of Independence is basically like this really big breakup letter, if you will, with Great Britain saying, hey, look, these are the issues we have with it, and we are now going to be free from you guys, free from Great Britain. We're not going to be under your rule anymore. We continue to see these Enlightenment ideas reflected in the Constitution as well as in the Bill of Rights, okay, the Articles of Confederation. So now what I want you to do, skip over to the second page of your notes, okay? For some reason, that got put on the second page. So skip over to the last page of your notes. We're going to wrap up the American Revolution part and then go back and talk about the cultural effects, okay? So Thomas Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence, big breakup letter from Great Britain. Well, who were the men that actually inspired and influenced the American Revolution? Okay, I want to see if you guys can guess as I give you guys clues, okay? So here we go. This guy, there are three of them, by the way. So this guy was an Enlightenment thinker who loved people and supported the idea of natural rights like life, liberty, and property. Okay, who did you write down? Did you write down John Locke? I hope so, because that's who it was, okay? All right, here's the next guy. This guy was really big on separation of powers within the government. He felt that there should be a system of checks and balances. Who is he? Okay, right, yes, Baron de Montesquieu. I'm just seeing in my mind, I'm just imagining that you guys wrote down these correct answers because you're geniuses and you remember all of this from before the break. So, okay, our last guy. He's our third Enlightenment thinker that influenced American Revolution. He thought that the government was a contract between the leaders and the people, and it made some people happy. Who is this guy? Did you write down Rousseau? Okay, good. So those are the Enlightened thinkers who influenced the American Revolution. So now that the American Revolution has occurred, this is going to give other people who are still living under absolute rulers hope. They have seen people rise up against their government, and they have successfully split from absolutism. So now, after the American Revolution, which is also known as the Revolutionary War, the government is we now have a government that is one with a true democratic relationship with its citizens, okay? All right, so go back to your other page of notes where we stopped and then I had you skip over. Go back to those cultural effects. So our Age of Reason not only influenced politics, but it also influenced culture as well. So we see Enlightenment ideas influence art and music. Let's start with our music. So we have a new style just a new style now out. It's called Baroque. Okay, Baroque music, Baroque art, Baroque literature. It's a new style. Okay, and anything in the Baroque style is going to be very ornate, very fancy, which is why I framed the word Baroque and kind of this really fancy looking frame here to help you remember that Baroque is very fancy and ornate. Okay, it can oftentimes it has religious themes to it. It can also be quite dramatic at times as well. So paintings that were done in the Baroque style would have classical subjects, things like public events, portraits, scenes of nature. We're beginning to see a romantic school of art emerge. Now understand this, there wasn't an actual school of romantic art that like artists applied to and went to and learned how to paint in romanticism style or anything like that, or in Baroque style. It's more of a school of thinking, a way of thinking or creating art. Many of the pieces at this point in time focus on nationalism, which is, in really basic terms, extreme pride in one's country. Now, from here on out throughout the rest of the school year, you're going to hear me talk about, and we're going to discuss in class, nationalism so much. And it might sound pretty boring right now, but once we get into it and you see how all of this starts to connect together, I think you're going to find it actually pretty interesting. So back to romantic art. Eugene Delacroix was one of the most famous, most well-known, prominent artists at the time. He lived from 1798 to 1863. This is his most famous painting. It is called Liberty Leading the People. We'll talk a lot about this in our next unit, which is going to be the French Revolution. But for right now, what I want you to know is that Delacroix was known for his very nationalistic paintings during this point in time. So if you're just checking out this portrait, you can see the painting. You can see that we have a lady here. Liberty is often referred to as a woman. Liberty leading the people. She is holding the French flag. You can see that there are men that have guns. We have people, we have bodies laying on the ground. There's like smoke in the background. You can see that there's a city here. So clearly there has been some sort of revolution. So I don't want to ruin it for you. I don't want to spoil the whole next unit. So we'll talk about this one more later. All right, so how do these Enlightenment ideas, how do they affect music? Well, we see that there are now two types, there are going to be two types of Enlightenment music. We have Baroque and we have classical. Okay, remember that Baroque is often very ornate, very fancy, oftentimes it's religious. And two of the most famous composers of the Baroque style are Johann Sebastian Bach, which I'm pretty sure you've heard of him before, as well as George Frederick Handel. Now, his most famous work was Handel's Messiah. This is one where when the king heard it, he stood up at a certain point. So we oftentimes hear it at Christmas time. So if you ever go to a concert at Christmas with maybe your parents or grandparents, and everybody all of a sudden just starts to stand up at one point in a song, this is the song, the Handel's Messiah. Okay, so the other type of classical music, which is all about balance, and order, and it's secular, it's not very religious, it is classical music. Okay, so no doubt the most famous of the classical composers is Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. Okay, this guy right here. Mozart is actually a pretty fascinating and brilliant composer. He wrote at least 600 works. He got a very early start. At the age of 6, he could play multiple musical instruments. He wrote his first opera when he was 12 years old. Now, he didn't live to be very old. He died at the age of 35, and the cause of death is not certain, but it is said that he was buried in a commoner's grave and that very few people came to mourn his death, which I find that fascinating for him to be so popular now. His music's so popular now. But so these guys, make sure you need to make sure that you can identify the style of music that they are known for, and you also have to make sure you know their names as well. Okay. All right, so we're seeing a change in literature at this point in time too, and there's a new form of literature called the novel, which you guys all read in your English classes now. And what the novel is basically a long narrative. Miguel de Cervantes was one of the first novelists, and his most famous work, here he is, fancy. One of his most famous works is Don Quixote, which is basically about a man who is just a smidge obsessed with chivalry. And he takes off on his own to commit random acts of chivalry, all in the name of the woman he loves. So, this whole idea of having a long narrative that somebody's going through and explaining, talking about, telling a story, basically, this is new. Okay, we've seen lots of sonnets, we've seen lots of poems, we've seen plays, but now we have the novel, which is a longer narrative. Okay. All right, now I know that we've already talked about these 3 final points, but I just want to touch on them again briefly. Because of these new enlightened thinkers and these new ways of doing things, we also are going to have changes to science and technology. So remember that there were 3 major improvements or changes that we've already talked about. Really, just going to touch on them real quick here. First of all, we have all-weather roads, which improve year-round transportation, and we now have the ability to trade year-round. It becomes easier to do that. Second, we have new and improved tool designs, which are going to increase agricultural productivity, which is a great thing, right? So we can now feed more people because we have better ways of doing things, okay, better tools to help us do our job better, help us farm better. And finally, there's going to be improvements made in ship design, which is going to result in a lower cost of transporting goods as far as trading goes. So that wraps us up for our unit. Yay! Okay. Please make sure you do get that study guide complete. I will help you submit it if you are unsure how to do it. I want to make sure everybody gets credit for it. Please ask if you don't know how to do it, okay? All right, next unit, we are marching on into the French Revolution. This is one of my favorite units to teach. It's really fun. I know, I say that about all of them, right? But this is going to be a lot of fun, and we will have your test next class, and then we'll pick up from there, all right? See ya.